think we should probably get into this a little bit.
Okay, come on with the questions.
Okay.
I'm used to asking the questions.
Are you? Oh, right, as a journalist, yeah. Now, Stalin and the Russians created something that mimicked a UFO, something that looked like it would be from another planet? Is that what they did?
Mothership.
Mm-hmm.
In those days, drones were, there was a mothership and a drone was attached to it, and it was jettisoned off. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, according...
In those days?
Well, in 1947, 48,
What do you mean by...
Well, they didn't, I mean, that was drone technology then.
Okay.
Right? So there's a mother craft, like an aircraft, and then the drone is like a small aircraft under it, and it gets jettisoned off. And that was what the craft was. It was jettisoned off. So Stalin actually, according to the source, invaded our airspace, which was the deep embarrassment to Truman.
So he invaded our airspace and then let this drone crash land on the ground with these things that turned out to be human.
Yes.
They looked like aliens, but they turned out to be humans that were manipulated surgically to look like aliens.
Yes, as a way to, and remember, I mean, not remember, but where this was, very close to a nuclear weapons base, to our White Sands military base. I mean, this is like not a place you want the Russians to be able to get near,
Right.
I mean, what was interesting is at Area 51, we then went out and mimicked all of those. One of our early drones was a mimicry of that. It was there was a M21, which was the mothership, and a D21, which was the daughter ship. So
how did they pilot them? Was it wirelessly like we do now?
No. Then it was like there was a pilot in the mothership, and they kind of let it go. Right, and it flew off. I mean, there's incredible stories of what the CIA was able to do out there at Area 51 with their air branch, The technology, they're always ahead of technology. That's what's remarkable.
Well, what Bob Lazar did film that was really shocking was the filming of these drones flying around and performing these really you've seen those videos, I'm sure, right?
In the 80s, it gets really crazy with what they're able to do and what they're... But, I mean, why I like looking at history is because you can see the progression, you know? You see how science evolves, bit by bit. And then there's these great breakthroughs because what the government is always looking for is called a revolution in military affairs, right? And that's certainly what drone technology did later on as drones became developed after the Vietnam War.
So in the 1980s when Bob Lazar was filming all this stuff, you think this was similar to the technology that we see publicly described today in terms of like what drones are capable of?
Sure. I mean,
so
that's
they probably had something like that back then.
When the F-117 was revealed during the first Gulf War, that aircraft was being developed for 25 years out at Area 51. Actually, at Area 52 was where they had it set up to develop that stealth technology. Think about, and what was amazing, talk about keeping secrets. They had something like 10,000 people working on that. No one knew about it. That story was never broken by the press, not by anyone. It just suddenly appeared in the Gulf War and took out Saddam Hussein's, facilities. That's a revolution in military affairs. What becomes interesting is then it becomes obsolete because now everybody knows about it and everybody's going to mimic that. And now you have to have a new weapon system, and that's the military-industrial complex.
So was this drone aircraft that was released from the mothership, was this capable of autonomous flight, or was it just they just threw it out there and let it crash?
The latter, right? And remember, that information I am very limited to. That's why it's 12 pages. It's like the source gave me these little bits of information, which I felt was important to include because it speaks to the big issue. Why is Area 51 classified? I mean, now it's not. President Obama was the first president to actually say Area 51 publicly. Some people say because of my book, right? Meaning it was out. The secret was out. But before that, I went through 10,000 pages of documents from the National Archives. And every place you see, the word Area 51 was actually redacted. Right? Why would you keep that so secret? I mean, all the guys that I was interviewing say they could call it, Groom Lake. They could call it the test facility. They could call it Paradise Ranch. But they couldn't say Area 51. Why? And the source said, well, because we did this horrible program out there, and the government doesn't want anyone to know about that ever. I mean, there's stories of, like, somebody asking Bill Clinton, about Area 51, him going white. I mean, human experiments? Who wants to be part of that? It's horrible.
But the human experiments were they limited to this mimicry of the Russian experiments where they were trying to get people to look like aliens, or was there something else going on?
Well, my goodness. I mean, you read now the declassified documents tell us how many different human experiments were going on around nuclear weapons, okay? Horrible experiments where they were subjecting people to radiation because they wanted to know. They felt, well, it's more important to know what happens to people than to not know. And so they would take groups of people that, say, had cancer or something and test them. So there's no doubt that the government has experimented on humans.